Hello and welcome. Thank you for popping into my channel. If you are new here, please like and subscribe for me. If you find this content helpful, then smash that notification bell so that you don't miss out on the next video. Comment below with anything that you need help with or topics you'd like me to cover, and check out my website, consultingninja.tech. With that out of the way, let's get to it. We previously went through a registration form, a real-world registration form. It looks like this. Now we're going to take it a bit further, and we are going to add in the login page, and we're also going to add in some JSON web token authentication. We're going to add some Hooks.server.ts to check if that cookie exists, if that token exists, and grab our user if it does. So let's get right to it. We have a lot of work to do today. So roll up your sleeves. Here we go. I have already added the link here, but there is nothing there. If you try to go there, you get my little custom error page. All right, let's get into our code. We need to create, in our routes, we need to create a new folder. This will be a login, and we're going to need a few things in here. I like to start with the markup. So let's start with the markup. Let's create a new file, plus page.svelte. And let's start with our script. This is going to be TypeScript, so lang equal ts. Now let's import enhance from app forms. I have a store that has a user. We're going to import that. We need to get our form data, so export let form. We need our load function data, so we need to export let data. And then I'm going to make a reactive statement here that says clear user. We're also going to use this page to clear the user out if they want to log out. We'll add that in just a minute. So what this is going to do, this store is a user store. It's either containing a user without the password or undefined. So anywhere that I need to, I can access that user in my pages. Primarily, this will come into play in the navigation bar. I don't think I'm really going to get into that, but I did want to point it out because this code will be available in my repository, and if anyone looks at that, that is what's going on with this statement. All right, so let's go to our markup. Again, I feel like all forms are a great place to add your website logo. So I'm just going to put that little filler there for you. Now we need to get to the actual form. Use enhance. We're not going to put anything else on there. Method of post. Action equal to !/login. Now we're going to make a div with a class of form item, and inside of here we're going to put our label for email, and then I do have just a little asterisk here that tells people that it is required. It's a required field. And then we have the actual input, and then we'll be able to copy and paste this. The login form is only going to have an email and password. That's all the data that we need. I'm not a fan of grabbing information that you don't need from the user. If we kick this back, then we're going to put the email back in here. So that's what this is going to do. If we send that form back as a failure, then we will also send back the email, but not the password. don't want to be sending the password around. We don't want to contain it. We don't want to store it. We don't want to do anything with the password unless we absolutely have to. Alright, then we can copy and paste this for the password. This will be password. This will say password. And we're not going to put this. Type of password, name of password, ID of password. Just like that. Now let's copy this. Paste that. And inside of here, we're going to put a little spot for our message. And then let's copy it one more time for the submit button. So in here, what we're going to do is if form.error, and we're going to put our form.message. So the message that we send back, if there's any problems and we need to kick this form back, this will be where the message is displayed. Lastly, we need a button, a type of submit. And just say login. Now I am going to just copy and paste the styles. This is already going to be a longer video, so we'll save a little bit of time by copy and pasting the styles. Don't want you guys to have to go through all that with me. And now we're going to get to the magic. The magic is going to be inside of the load function and also the actions. So we need a plus page.server.ts. And in here we're going to import all kinds of stuff. We're going to need actions, import type. We're going to need actions. We're going to need request event. We're going to need action failure and redirect from @svelte.js/kit. Then we need the actual function redirect from the same location. I have a type for my forms and also for my form responses. So I'm going to import my form response type here, login form response from my types file, and then I'm going to import my function to interact with the database, which is find user by email with password. When we're getting this user, we are going to need the password because we're going to need to compare it to what is saved. And then my database connection file that fires up the database and returns the collection to work with. We need the secret ingredient. That will also be available in the repository. And then we're going to need our bcrypt.js, by the way. It's a tiny bit slower than bcrypt, but there's some issue going on with SvelteKit and the regular bcrypt. So rather than dealing with fixing it, there's a few workarounds available on the web. I'm just using the JavaScript version. It's only a little bit slower and you don't have to deal with anything. It's a pure JavaScript implementation of the same exact stuff. Alright, so now we have all of our imports, and yes, there's quite a few there. Now we need to do two things. This first thing is going to be a load function, so export async function load. That's going to take cookies. And what we're going to do here is check if there's an auth token. So if you're getting kicked to this page from our logout page and function, then we're going to check to make sure that there's not a cookie here. Cookies.get. if you would be here otherwise, then you're not logged in anyways. And then we're going to check if not auth token, return clear user true, and then the page will then erase the user from the store. Otherwise, we're going to just return clear user false. And that's all we're going to do in this load function. The rest of the action is going to be happening in our actions. So let's create those. So we need export const actions. This is going to be of type actions. And this is an object that takes all of your actions as properties. The only one we're going to have here for the login page is a login action. That's going to be an async function like this. And we're going to take the cookies and the request like that. And we can type this with request event. And it's going to return a promise that contains login form response or an action failure that is wrapping a login form response. Or a redirect. A lot of TypeScript there. Let me just go through this one more time. So this is an async function that takes a request event, and from that we're immediately extracting the request itself and the cookies. That's destructuring. And then this is going to return a promise that either unwraps to a login form response itself, or it's going to be a promise that resolves to an action failure, and inside of that action failure will be a login form response, or it will be a promise that resolves to a redirect. So that is what's going on with the TypeScript there. Now the first thing we need to do is let's get the form data. So const login form data equals await request.form data. I love this functionality. Form actions are pretty sweet in Svelte and SvelteKit. Makes this super easy. So now that we have our form data, let's get the email out. Const email equals login form data dot get email, and we're just going to go ahead and convert that to a string right away. And the password, const password. And we could just copy and paste the rest of this and replace email with password. Now let's initialize a login response. Let login response have that email. Error will start with false, and we'll update that accordingly depending on what happens, and the message will be blank to start with. Let's get to the good stuff. And what we're going to do here is we're going to try, and what we're going to try is to validate our user, try to log in our user. So const, first thing we need to do is fire up our database and get our collection. So const collection equals await database connection. And that, again, that function just fires up the database and returns the collection that I want to work with. Const user attempting login equals await find user by email with password, and we're going to send that collection and the email from the form. So this is going to go into that collection and attempt to find the user by that email, and then we're going to see if the password that comes back from that user, if there is a user there, see if it matches. So const auth attempt equals await decrypt.js.compare, and what we're comparing is, and make sure you put these in the right order. It's what we're comparing is the password from the form to the password from the database. Okay, it has to be in that form because that's the way the compare function works. You're comparing the string password from the form to the hashed password. So you have to have those in the right order. If you don't, it will bite you. So what we're going to do here is grab the password out from the user attempting login. And if not auth attempt, then we're going to set login response dot error equal to true. And then we're going to set the message login response dot message to invalid username or password. We're not going to give anyone too much information on this. You don't want to give too much information on a failed authentication attempt, just in case anyone is trying any brute force attacks. We don't want to give any information away. If the auth attempt was successful, then what we're going to do is take the password off of the user that was returned. So we'll destructure that, and we'll do that by saying const brackets password comma dot 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 user attempting login minus password is assigned user attempting login. So this is just some destructuring that is going to strip the password out and put everything else in here, and now we have the user without the password. Alright, and so what we're going to do is we're going to create an authentication token, a JWT token with that. So let's say const auth token equals JWT.sign, and what we're signing here is first an object with the property auth user, and it's going to be the value of, we'll copy and paste that to save us typing that long word out, but we want to be descriptive in what it is that is going there. And then we're going to pass in our secret ingredient. That secret ingredient will help prevent cross-site request forgery. We want to make sure to include that. Alright, and then we need to set an expiration time, and that goes inside of an object. So expires in, and you can just put in as a string 24H, 24 hours, just like that. Now that we have our token, then what we want to do is place it in a cookie. So let's go ahead and do a cookies.set, and we're going to set auth token to contain the auth token that we just created, that we just signed with JWT right here. And then we want to set some additional properties on our cookie. First things first, HTTP only, true. You must do that, otherwise it's pretty insecure. Max age, this is in milliseconds. What we want here, I'm going to make mine good for 24 hours, so we want 60 times 60 times 24. And then we also want same site to be strict. So you want this as secure as possible. If you're not setting these options, you're not using the strictest method. You're not using the most stringent security protocol that you can, and I highly recommend that you do it this way. So if that's all successful, then what we want to do next is throw a redirect, and it's going to be a 302. Let's just go to /. Now after the try, we need a finally. If you put a catch on here, one issue that you'll run into is that your redirect will not work, so we're not going to put a catch here. So put a finally, and then we're going to return the login response. Let's just walk through this one more time. We're pulling out the email and password. We're initializing this response object. We are going to attempt to connect to the database, find the user by the email that they gave. We're then going to compare the password that they typed to the stored password for that user. If it comes back as no good, then we're going to set the login response error to true and the login response message to invalid username and password. And then all of this other stuff would get skipped, and we just return that response, and they'll be sitting at the login page with that form, and the error will be true, and they'll have that error message for them, and they can attempt again. If the auth attempt was successful, then what we're going to do is sign a new authentication token by putting that user into that token minus the password. And then we're going to set that authentication token inside of a cookie, making sure to set the most stringent security properties that we can on that cookie, and then we're going to redirect back to the home page. So let's save that. Let's save our login page, and let's go see. So here is our email, password, and login. Let's go ahead and type in a user. Beautiful. It redirected. I'm assuming that means it was successful. Let's take a look and see if our cookie is there. It'll be in Inspect Application and Cookies, and there is our auth token. Beautiful. We also see the options set here, HTTP only and same site strict. That's exactly what we want. The expiration is right there as well. So you'll see it expires tomorrow. It's exactly what we want. Now that a user's logged in, what else can we do? Well, one thing that I'm going to do in this application is I'm going to create a Hooks file in the base directory that is going to check if there's an authentication token there every time that a user moves around. So every time there's a new request for a new page to the back end, I want to check to see if there is somebody logged in with a unexpired authentication token, and if they are there, then I want to pull that user out from the database and return it. That way we have it available. So let's go ahead and create a Hooks file inside of source, new file. This is going to be a Hooks.server.ts, and what we're going to do in here, we need to first import our secret ingredient. Secret ingredient from $env/static. We also want to get our database connection, so dbcon, and we're going to get our find user by URL. The URL is similar to the email. In this application, it is a unique value. One of the things that you might remember from our registration form is that we're checked to make sure that that is a unique value, so that's another way to find users in this application. JWT from JSON Web Token. And then what we're going to do is export async function handle event and resolve. And the very first thing we're going to do is every request that's coming through, we're going to see if there is an auth token attached to it. So let's go ahead and const auth token equals event.cookies.get auth token, and let's wrap this in a try. If not auth token, we're going to set event.locals.authUser to undefined. All right, next let's check the claims. This is claims are how you verify JSON web tokens. This is essentially running the verification that checks to see if that authentication token is still good. So let's do const claims equals JWT.verify and pass in that auth token and the secret ingredient. And again, the very first thing we want to do here is if not claims, then we're going to set the event.locals.authUser to undefined. Just like that. Now, if auth token and claims are good, then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the database, const collection await db connection. We're going to go into the database and pull out the user. Const full user equals await find user by URL, passing the collection and the claims dot auth user dot URL. So whenever you sign a token, we put our whole user minus the password into that token. And so we can pull out the URL and search for that person by URL or email. It doesn't matter. I'm just showing you that there's another way. We can do URL, email, doesn't really matter in this application because, again, those are both unique values. And then what we need to do is strip the password out. Const, same way, we're destructuring it out. Whoops, 3 dots, dot user minus password equals full user. And then we're going to set event.locals.authUser to user minus password. And then now we can put a finally, and what we want to do here is const response equals await resolve event return response, because you're going to need to do that no matter what happens up here. All this is going to do is check to see if there is an authentication token. If there is, it's going to check to see if it's still good and verify it. And if it is still good, then we're going to go ahead and grab that user, strip out the password, and return it. And a couple of things I want to point out here is you'll notice that the IntelliSense picked up my auth user in order to make that magic happen, and you need to do this anyway. But inside of app.d.ts, the definition file for app, there's a few different things that you can do in here, and in this case you really should. One of them is for error. I'm making use of that. I have a default error page that my application will land on, and when it does, I can access these things easily because I have them defined in my app.definition file, and I also have the locals defined. It's an interface that defines locals as an object containing one property called auth user that is either going to be a user without the password or undefined. So make sure to do that in your application. Now we can go ahead and save our hooks file, and inside of routes, inside of the base plus page.server.ts, I have a blank load function here. Inside of this load function now, we can go ahead and fill this in to make use of this. Let's go ahead and add locals in here inside of the brackets. And then we can go ahead and make use of this. If we wanted this to be a protected route, we simply could put something like this: if not locals.authUser, throw a redirect and kick them right off of that page. This is the base page, and we don't want to redirect. You certainly can do that, but you don't want to do that on your home page. But we do want to return that user and make use of it to provide a nice little welcome message, or more personalize the welcome message. So let's get rid of that redirect. We do not want to do that. What we do want to do is, let's go ahead and let auth user equals undefined if locals.auth user, then we're going to set auth user to locals.auth user. And then we're going to return auth user. Now inside of plus page, here we have the data coming back. I guess I called that user minus password. It doesn't really matter. But you grab your load function data by using export let data. And then here I'm making a reactive statement. Just because you are getting your data back doesn't mean that everything will update automatically. What I'm doing here is I'm converting that load function data to be a reactive statement, and then I'm also using that reactive statement to update my store value. So I'll also have use of the user inside of a store that I can pass throughout the application. That will come in handy when passing the styles that a user chooses to the navigation bar, for instance, which doesn't have its own load function. So that's what's going on there. I did point that out in another file, but that's what that is. Here, I'm making use of that to just give a more friendly message. All right, so we give that file a save, that hooks file a save, and you'll see it already flickered in the background, but now we have access to that user, and it adds that little personalized message of their first name here. You might have noticed also that the navigation bar changed as well. I'm not going to get into that portion today, but I do have that hooked up to a store, so if a user is logged in, then they have different options in the navigation bar. So one last thing that I want to go through today is the logout function, and in order to do that, let's go ahead and make a logout page. Inside of routes, let's create a new folder called logout. And inside of here, what we need is, we really just need a plus page.server, new file, plus page.server.ts. And inside of here, what we're going to do is we're just going to do an import redirect. Whoop, not the type. We don't want the type, we want the actual function. It's a lowercase r. Import redirect, and then our load function, so export function load. If someone goes to this page, we are going to strip out that cookie, cookies.set the auth token, whoops, and what we're going to do is set it to the empty string and then put a max age of 0. And then we're going to throw redirect 302, and we're going to redirect them to the login page. That is going to double check to make sure that that cookie is gone, and then erase the store. So let's go ahead and save that. Now, one thing I want to point out is that SvelteKit by default preloads all of the pages when you hover on top of your links. For your logout page, you're gonna want to disable that functionality. In order to do that, let me just show you guys in case you're not aware. Here's my links. In order to shut that off, all you do is add a data-SvelteKit-preload-data equals off, and then it will stop that from happening. In this case, it would log the user out, so we definitely don't want that to happen. And then I also make use of that for their dashboard. I'm not going to get to the dashboard today, but we will do that at some point. So if I click logout, it's going to kick me back to the login page, and then you'll see that the navigation bar items changed there as well. However, there's a bit more that we should do in order to really secure the application. One of those things is to create an API endpoint that also checks to see if the user is authenticated, and if they are, also returns the user or returns an error message and lets us know, so that we can ping that in many places. So let's say a user were to log in and then they were sitting on the dashboard for a week and the cookie is expired. If we don't do an additional check after the page has once rendered, then they would be able to continue making changes long after their cookie has expired. And so we also create an API endpoint that we can ping however many times we'd like, wherever we need to, before we allow other changes. And we'll do that in another video. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe, comment below with your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.